Well, let's keep the focus on what I would call the festive season exodus. And reporter Linda Mnisi has also spent the day traveling around Johannesburg, monitoring traffic as holidaymakers head out of time. And he joins us in studio to talk to us about his observations. You've been out there since very early. Talk to us about what you've seen and heard.
Well, it essentially started as a very quiet morning, Xoli, as you observe some of the people that are leaving, particularly when it comes to long-distance traveling and cross-border, depots that operate within that industry. You look at Lesotho, you look at those that are traveling to Zimbabwe, but it's quite interesting that when I got to Braamfontein, in fact, at the Zimbabwe depot, that's when we started seeing a large influx of people. There's a large number of people that are going in and out of that depot. People are traveling ahead of Christmas. And I asked them, one of the reasons why they're traveling around, especially around the second wave, and in light of the new variant that was announced by health experts, and this is what they had to say.
All right, it looks like those voxes are going to come in a moment. These are sound bites. That's the terminology we use here on television when you go around getting this information from people. But tell us about whether there are any fears, Linda, particularly from people who are of Zimbabwean origin. You mentioned that you were at the transport hub that transports people who are going to cross the Limpopo. Is there any anxiety with us as far as the issue of transporting COVID-19 to Zimbabwe? It's a country that we all know financially it is challenged because of what leaders there have termed the sanctions are the fault of why Zimbabwe is suffering today. But we also know the issues around Zimbabwe and how the leadership there is implicated. But nonetheless, talk to us about whether they fear transporting COVID-19 to their home country.
I think this ties in with the reason actually why they're traveling back home. You'll remember South Africa was in a hard lockdown for a period of time and they were not able to cross borders. Eventually at level 1, when they were able to go back home, there wasn't enough money because people did not work. And I spoke to one gentleman who says, I haven't seen my family for the longest of time. So at this particular point, my main focus is going home to spend Christmas with my family and not necessarily worrying about the pandemic. It appears to me, Xoli, that people are at this particular point are willing to risk it all just to be with their families. In fact, I go back to the president's speech when he said, spend the Christmas with your loved ones. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're saying, well, the president has already said we shouldn't be out in the street. So what we're doing is going back home to spend Christmas
with our loved ones. But what about protecting your loved ones? Because it's a good point you make about the president saying spend Christmas with your loved ones. And yes, we've got to be sympathetic because there are what you call economic migrants as well that are in South Africa making money because, Zimbabwe financially is not doing well. But at a time where you risk getting them infected with this virus, look at countries like the UK. In London, for example, there is not going to be Christmas if you are at home, and it's regarded as one of those tier 4, as the Prime Minister there has termed it. It means that you simply cannot mix with anyone. And these are the dangers here. Surely, there have to be those who are thinking about putting at risk their family members because it might be the last time they spend Christmas with them.
You're actually taking me back to a time when the borders were open for the first time here in South Africa. In fact, we went back to Limpopo to the Beitbridge border to see how things were going. And we noticed a lot of people that were coming into the country illegally saying that, well, the situation in Zimbabwe does not allow us to sit down and pretend as if we understand what the lockdown is all about. We're hungry. So what we're going to be doing is coming into South Africa. And if you remember, by the time the president announced that we would be moving to lockdown level 1, Zimbabwe had far less numbers of COVID-19 than South Africa. So people were essentially coming into the country, risking getting the virus and taking it back home. So what we're hearing right now is, people who are saying at this particular point, we don't have much options because, of the circumstances. For those who have been able to work, they're taking something back home. You look at the cargo, they're wrapping up things to take back home. So they're thinking about their loved one. I spoke to one gentleman who said, if I'm not going back home, but I've made sure that I work during this, period of time to make sure that I send something back home so that they too can have a better Christmas.
Are there those, Linda, who financially they have been so squeezed? For example, we know that the lockdown has also resulted in a lot of job losses. I heard at some point that there are those who are desperate to leave South Africa because they not only have lost their jobs, but they are now also, they do not have shelter because where they were employed, they've obviously lost jobs, but where they stayed, they're unable to pay rent, and therefore staying in South Africa has become impossible. Therefore, it's probably time to go back home. Did you come across people like that?
Well, not quite. The number of people that I came across were people that it seemed as though they had jobs or either had were selling stuff around that particular transport hub. In fact, I went to Newtown as well, where you're seeing a lot of people really taking advantage of these small, these depots where people go in large numbers. So they're saying essentially this is how we take advantage of the situation. For us, it's an opportunity to make money, and if you can, send it back home.
Finally, Linda, the Transport Minister has been at pains to say part of this campaign, safety traveling campaign, has to do with encouraging people to drive in the day as opposed to driving at night, because that's when the horrific accidents happen at night. And you talk about the cargo that is carried by these vehicles that are going to go across. What's the feeling around that, traveling at night?
I mean, one can only anticipate if a bus leaves Johannesburg at this time, there will be traveling at night. So, it would seem that, a lot of them are banking on the JMPD officers that are on the road, the various traffic officers that are on the road. In fact, when you drive around, you see a lot of them, making sure that they're searching cars, making sure that everyone who is behind the wheel is proper and is not drunk.
Yeah. Linda Mnisi, thank you very much. In fact, it comes on the back of Operation Ogai Mulawa. I think about 49 people were arrested for drunk driving and basically breaking the rules.
Absolutely.
All right, Linda Mnisi, let's leave it there for the time